and welcome back to the first episode of Season 2 of Career Spotlight. Today with us, I have a very special guest. I have the Executive Vice President and Physician-in-Chief of Northwell Health, as well as the Dean of the Zucker School of Medicine. I have with us here today Dr. David Battinelli, and he's here with us today to talk about not only his career in the field of medicine, but share with us some very important life lessons. So, without further ado, I'd like to welcome Dr. David Battinelli. First of all, I want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. It is such an honor to have you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Okay. So, can you start off with telling us a little bit about what it was like for you growing up and what your childhood was like and why you decided to slowly go into the field of medicine and what prompted you to go there?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in my early years in New York City. My high school years in New Jersey, in Jersey City. But while in New York City, I grew up immediately across the street from Mount Sinai Hospital. My mother was a nurse. And so I got a lot of early exposure to at least seeing the comings and goings of a hospital. And obviously, the comings and goings and stories from my mother, who was a nurse. And I became interested in medicine. When I got to high school, I realized that I was a good student and I was doing well in the sciences. I was also interested in the humanities, so it remained an interest of mine. And then eventually to medical school, and it's really not until you get into medical school that you actually really understand what you wind up doing in medicine, because there's so many different careers, so many different kinds of doctors, and so many different ways that you can practice. But it was from a pretty early age that, and probably because I looked out the window, much of my early life, looking directly at a hospital, that got me interested.
So do you mind talking to us a little bit about what your medical school experience was like and what residency looks like and what that entails?
Yeah, so first and foremost, you need to continue to do well as a student through college, apply to med school, which remains pretty competitive. There's a lot of talk out there about maybe people don't want to be physicians as much as they did in the past. I personally think that's a myth. For example, at our medical school, we get over 5,000 applications for just 100 positions. So if it is less than it was, that just seems very relative and almost insignificant. So after college, med school is 4 years. And different med schools approach things differently. Back in the day when I went, which was over 40 years ago, it was primarily first 2 years where you learn different kinds of science, and then the last 2 years where you spend a lot of time taking care of patients, learning how to apply the science. Currently, our school, for example, blends the clinical and the science together, and I would think most schools, by the time current high school students are ready for med school, will do a little bit more of that. So it's been pretty clear that the science has been easier to learn as we have more opportunities to interact via the web and different sources, obviously AI, and it's really much more about how do you take the science and apply it to the care of the patient over that 4-year period of time. When you finish medical school, as I always tell my graduating classes, the good news is, yes, you get your MD degree, you are a doctor. The bad news is you're only about halfway done. So after you finish medical school, you've still got a minimum of 3 to 5 more years of training, typically in hospitals, caring for patients, usually in the discipline that you've chosen, whether it be obstetrics or pediatrics, and then you're out on your own. So it's a long road. It takes about, from the minute you sort of dive into, I want to be a doctor of science, till you're out on your own, it's about 12 years.
Why did you specifically want to be a physician, and what kind of prompted you to do that personally?
Yeah, so again, as I learned more science and I learned more about what a physician did, it was fascinating to me that you could, apply science along with knowledge about the humanities to help individual patients. What I may not have been thinking about as much at the time, but has become more true, is that I can't think of another career that is more focused on lifelong learning. So I was always interested in learning, and everything changes. I mean, scientific discovery is exploding, and so it's fascinating. And we can do so much more today than when I entered medical school for patients. We didn't have things such as transplant back then. We didn't have cures for things such as AIDS. I mean, you're always getting better and better. So that to me was a big draw.
Can you also talk to us a little bit about how you see AI impacting the medical field, as AI is becoming more prevalent in a ton of fields, medicine being one? And since you do say that medicine is a lifelong field and you've been doing this for such a long time, how do you see AI impacting the field of medicine?
Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating, just like each other discovery along the road. You know, when I was in medical school, we didn't have computers. So, you know, it was like, well, gee, how would computers? Well, they give you access to more information. You get information more quicker. You're able to track things. And AI is just going to be the next iteration, right? It's going to be able to do lots of things. And since the rate limiting step in medicine is how do you get the answer to critical questions and then figure out how to apply them to individual patients, AI is going to be of enormous benefit. The other side of it is really from the patient's perspective, right? So we as physicians treat patients. What we would love to be able to do is have patients learn how to take better care of themselves in between the visits, whether those visits are in person or virtual or via some AI mechanism. So I'll give you an example. Again, back in the day, in my early days, you know, it was very hard to control diabetes because we couldn't measure blood sugars without an injection or a needle. Now that you've seen on television, they have the Dexcom discs attached to somebody's arm. Quite frankly, as it says in the commercial, friends and family are monitoring blood sugars better than we could as physicians, not because they know more medicine and more science, but the connection with the patient and the monitoring through mechanisms such as computerized or other kinds of discoveries, including AI, get better and better. So the care of patients is going to get better and better as we learn how to use AI as a tool.
Do you see AI becoming a threat to the field of medicine in any way or shape or form? Because some, like with AI becoming more prevalent, it could also possibly take away some jobs from different fields. So how do you see that impacting medicine? Or do you only see AI as something to help and enhance the field?
Yeah, I mean, I've sort of turned my cards over. I think it's going to help and enhance. But I will say that it's very common for people to believe that new technologies are a threat and will remove jobs. But the data is pretty clear that technologies change jobs, but they create more jobs. So if you're not willing to adapt and learn new technologies, that's a reasonable threat. But there are always more jobs with technology, not less jobs. But the jobs are slightly different. But in general, it's those jobs that allow you to do things better than you could do before.
I 100% agree, and I feel like you already see AI helping so many patients in different aspects, such as with like diabetes, being able to monitor it at home. So you're the dean of the Zucker School of Medicine. So could you talk to us a little bit about that role?
Yeah, sure. So after medical school, I spent 25 years at Boston University. And then I was recruited here to help build the curriculum of this medical school. So this is a brand new medical school that opened up in 2011. We've already graduated 10 classes. Have been in existence for about 15 years. And, it was really a great opportunity for me to be able to create a new medical school and create the experience that I thought was best. This is very hard to change an old medical school or an old business. The job I have is reflective of the partnership between Northwell, the health system, and Hofstra, the university. So this is the Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra/Northwell. So I am in charge of all the clinical education and research at Northwell and also the School of Medicine. But it's really one job. So that's how it came about. We do a lot of very, very unique things. But the Zucker School of Medicine at Hofstra Northwell has been recognized most recently as a top-tier medical school in the United States, mostly because we've been able to combine the resources of a great university and a great health system to create a great product.
Can you also talk a little bit more about what exactly your role is as the chief physician at Northwell?
Yeah, I mean, when I explain to my friends, they get confused, mostly because Northwell's such a big place, right? So we have nearly 100,000 employees. We're the largest health system on the East Coast. We're the largest employer in the entire state of New York. We've got well over 20 hospitals, well over 1,000 ambulatory sites. So my job is to help oversee how that all happens. Obviously, I'm only one person. So I have a team of phenomenal people situated in all of those places, communicating with each other, seamlessly to be able to deliver the highest quality clinical care, which is our primary mission. We also do education. We also do research and discovery. But job one is the highest quality clinical care possible.
So in a role where you have to manage a team and be a leader, what would you say are the most important traits about being a good leader and managing such a large team?
Yeah, look, I mean, I firmly believe there's sort of three critical aspects to leadership. The first is that you have to have some type of what I call clinical credibility. So your peers have to believe that you know enough about the discipline, you know enough about the business, that you're the right person to be in a leadership role, and then you've got to do the leadership right. So the second quality I think of it as a selfless quality, meaning as a leader, you've got to be able to develop a following. People need to want to follow you, and people will follow you if they believe that you will help them succeed. It's also okay if you succeed, but it's not okay if only you succeed and they don't succeed, right? So it's pretty easy to develop a following. So you got to be credible. You got to be able to develop a following. And the last is probably the hardest, and that's you've got to be able to run something. You've got to be able to govern something. There's always a finite amount of resources, and you're not going to make everybody happy all the time, but you've got to be respected. You got to be fair. You got to be just, and you have to be fiscally responsible so that you're able to run the business. So clinically credible, selfless, and you got to be able to govern.
I totally agree. I think those are really important qualities in being a leader. So if you were to start off your career today, what is something that you would do differently?
So, a lot of people ask me, well, if you didn't decide to become a doctor, what would you do? I'm not sure I would know in retrospect, but I would probably be in a teaching profession of some sort. Mostly because I do enjoy the learning, I do enjoy teaching and educating, and it's a nice mix of giving and also receiving.
What are some of the biggest challenges you faced during your career?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest challenge I think most people face is trying to make sure that you are working hard, achieving best you can, the popular term in terms of sort of work-life balance, and continuing to grow and challenge yourself. I've always talked about an attitude of work hard, play hard, which sometimes is difficult for people to understand, but there's a great book, if anybody's interested, called Play, written by Stuart Brown. And I think one of his most insightful quotes is he says, the opposite of play is not work, it's depression.
Okay.
And so, this is all about making sure that you are able to go to work with a positive attitude, get the most out of it, and give of yourself, and then your job becomes less of a job and more of a fulfilling profession.
I totally agree, and I think that whatever you choose to do in life should be something that you're interested in, something that you can carry on for the rest of your life. And if you're thinking about going to college or finding a job, don't just find something that you feel like you have to do or like that would pay you well. Obviously that's important, but also do something that you love doing and that can like kind of carry you on through like the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Okay, so my final question is, if you could say anything to the students of Manhasset, any advice, any like final thoughts you'd give them about their career, college application, like going to college, or just any piece of like life advice, what would you leave them with?
Yeah, so I think, maybe some of the secret formula, secret sauce, however you want to say it, is it's a combination of hard work, paying attention to your studies, doing as best you can, investing in yourself and your growth. But the other part is that you've got to be a great colleague, right? So what I frequently tell people is sometimes, the world looks like the way you get things, it's all about who you know. But the reality is it's exactly the opposite. It's all about who knows you and what do they know about you. And if they know that you're a hardworking, honest, good colleague, giving person, people will offer you jobs. And then it's balls in your court to prove yourself as those things.
Okay. Well, once again, thank you so much, Dr. Battinelli, for coming on the podcast and sharing your wisdom with us, just not only about the career and field of medicine, but about life. So once again, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
All right, it's my pleasure. Good luck to everybody.
Thank you. Once again, that is all I have for you guys today. I'm your host, Rashida Punawala, signing off.